An alcoholic. As Karthik said, my sobriety date is in August 27th of 2021. We all have a drunkalog, so I won't bore you with mine. Um, One of the things that I've prayed on so that my higher power could speak through me tonight, and one of the things that kept coming up while I was meditating was talking about that drowning in sobriety, uh, dying in sobriety. And basically, um, I've worked a fairly good program, I'd like to think. The first 3 years in the program, I had one sponsor, and I really did everything they told me. I jumped into service work immediately in my home group, and I tried to travel around. I sponsored and really stayed as involved as I could. If the doors of my home group were open, you'd find me there, and you'd find me there very early, and even on days when they weren't open, just to be present and to do what I could. But around 3.5 years, I found myself falling into a deep depression. Um, I'd sponsored many women off and on over the years, and the craziness that goes with that. And even though I had, I want to say 3 or 4 sponsees at that time, and I was going to meetings, 3 to 5 days a week, and doing everything that I was told to do, I still found myself feeling empty and less than. Um, I really started to fall into like a deep depression. And like a lot of us, we're really good at masking, what we're feeling inside, because it's really hard when you go to a lot of meetings where everyone's always happy, joyous, and free. And, sobriety is wonderful, and it is, but you're just not feeling all those things on the inside. I wasn't. And I was having a hard time saying that out loud, because I felt like if I came to a meeting and I said, I'm struggling with, like, I don't want to be here anymore, life's hard, and, all these things that are going on, I was afraid that my sponsees would find me as less than, as a faker, as someone that was putting on airs, which is funny because that's actually what I was doing, pretending to be okay the whole time. I didn't ever like people to know when things were hard. A lot of us have a hard time, admitting when things are rough and asking for help. And even though my sponsor knew what I was going through, I wasn't being fair to my sponsees, and I wasn't being fair to my home group by not sharing those struggles. I wasn't being fair to the newcomer that was, finally falling off that pink cloud that we feel in the beginning. And it took a day where I was sitting at home, and I spent the whole afternoon on texting the suicide hotline, because you can text those now, which, as someone who hates talking on the phone, that was fantastic in a weird way. But I got off the phone and I went to a meeting, and that night they asked if anyone had a burning desire. And for the first time, like, I really had a burning desire. And I shared, how I felt. And I was finally honest with myself and with everyone around me about where I was. And that's when I realized, through that meeting and through talking to people afterward, just how not alone, I was. And by doing that, I was able to really take time to listen to the suggestions of people who'd come before me. A lot of the old timers and some people that were the same age as me, that are in YPAA that have significant time, were able to come and say, hey, this is something that happens. And, it gave me the chance to like sit down and go through the steps again and kind of work on my current situation with where I was. So I went through the steps again, and I was able to really get honest with myself and with my sponsor, and find some things that I hadn't even realized I'd been holding on to. And that's one of the things that I think that a lot of us don't, well, at least a lot of the people that I talk to, sometimes we don't realize that we still have things we're holding on to. until we have to like stop and try and take it back to where these feelings are coming from. And through that I was able to finally get some relief and realize where that depression was coming from in that moment. Now, I'm all for getting outside help. I've got a therapist and I've got a very hefty medicine bag of things that help keep me so that I can, be happy, joyous, and free, but so that I can also, feel sadness and all of that too. But this was something I think I needed more in my soul. And I was able to work through that. And by opening up in my meeting, other people came up to me and they were like, hey, I've been feeling that same feeling. I was going to die in sobriety and not by the hand of a bottle. It was because even though I thought I was doing everything right, I was missing something spiritually. So I went through and I went and did like another fourth and fifth step with my sponsor. I found some things I needed to address, and I dove headfirst into my local YPAW, and YPAW kind of gave me back the excitement that I hadn't realized I was missing. I come from a very old timer heavy group where, the good old boys kind of run everything. And I love my old guys very much. They're fantastic. And they've saved me from a lot of crazy things in my sobriety. But, finding my young, wild people, the people that don't look at me funny because I have piercings in my face, because I have tattoos everywhere that actually got in sobriety. None of these were drunk tattoos. Like my family almost wishes they had that excuse for why I look like this. Um, it was just fun to really get to dive headfirst into service work with a group of people that I could connect with, that listened to the same music and wanted to do fun things. Um, I got really excited to connect with YPAW. I actually didn't know YPAW existed until this past spring. And since then, I've been to CircuitPaw and FickyPaw. I'm going to NickyPaw soon. I think I'm in every YPaw Facebook group, and I've signed up for like every YPaw event that I can find. AlkyPaw is coming up in November. Like, I found my tribe. I made good friends. I found people that, don't go to sleep at 8 o'clock at night. Because even my friends that are my age in my home group go to bed at like 9 o'clock at night. And I'm like, God, I've still got like another 7 hours in my day. What are you doing? They're like, let's go to the gym at 4 a.m. because they're waking up and I'm still up from the night before. So I love finding, having found this home in YPaw that I can be myself in and not have to try to fit myself into their mold of what sobriety looks like. Um, because for me, sobriety does look like getting the fun piercings and getting tattoos and dyeing my hair and not doing it because the mental health gods have requested the sacrifice, but because that's just the fun stuff that we want to get into. You know, I, it's been it's been amazing, and I still have my oldie paw friends. Like, don't get me wrong, I love my old timers in my home group, and we still go. I was at a convention this past weekend where everything is done by like 9 o'clock, and they eat at like we eat dinner at 4 o'clock every day this past weekend, which is usually when I'm having breakfast, so it was very confusing for me. So, like there it's just nice to have this new home in Waipaw. And, I'm really grateful to get to speak to some young people too. Usually when I'm speaking at my home group, there's at least one person that falls asleep in the back because it's past their bedtime. So, um, is that my time, Karthik? You're supposed to be keeping track.
Yeah, we still have 5:38.
5 minutes left. Great. So I get to tell you some other fun things about sobriety. Um, so again, with like dying in sobriety, it's not just about the highs, especially I loved seeing all the like days that we're going through on the screen, 4 days, like, oh my God, what was I doing at 4 days? I was still in detox at 4 days sobriety. If I had had YPAW that early in my sobriety, I was thinking about this a few weeks ago, like how different my journey would have looked to this point. Um, I'm not sad that I missed that, like, I love the way my journey went, but I think it's so wonderful when I get to see people come in early and get to experience YPAW. I have become so obsessed with the YPAW way of life that, I've been like anybody that comes in, I'm like, if you can't afford to go to a YPAW event, I'm like, just get in the car, like, we'll go. I just want us to go and get there and experience it because I think that some of the people coming in, if they can find the connections like I found just in the last 6 months early in sobriety, like imagine what their future can look like, being able to find that service work, that place that you fit in. Um, I think that finding YPAW has even really enhanced my style as a sponsor. Um, I have sponsees come in, then they're younger like me, and they keep going. Don't look at me like that. I'm young. And they go, they're like, oh, there's just, I always thought that AA was just a bunch of old guys sitting in a circle. And it's like, well, our home group kind of does look like that, but it's like, just come with me and come see this. Um, I was at Ficky Paul 2 weekends ago, and there's pool parties and there's just people going wild. And it's like, being sober doesn't mean we have to stop having fun. And I think I kind of saw that in the beginning of who is Sharon in sobriety if she's not able to just be wild and out there and doing all these crazy things. And so, getting to see someone's eyes light back up in sobriety and see that they can be themselves has just been something that I feel like I maybe wasn't able to show my sponsees in the past. So, I even have encouraged a lot of my older friends. I'm like, just come to like one thing, like experience this, because even if it's not for you, it's another resource. This is another tool that we have in our toolbox for our younger sponsees. And even as we get older, we're always going to have this option to pass on to them now. And again, like I only have like 6 months in with YPAW, but I have just become like the biggest advocate for it. I'm like, everybody, I ran into someone at another convention the other day, and I was like, is it weird if I just go up and say, like, hi, you look young, like you should hear about, YPAW, like our Lord and Savior Bill Wilson and what we have here. Excuse that last part. I know our higher powers are all different, but yeah, like I really am passionate about YPAW now. And I love that this is a Zoom meeting at night. I didn't know this existed until Karthik asked me to come speak here. So I love seeing how many people are here, especially because we have a smaller YPAW community in our area. So in order to really go to like a big meeting, we have to travel upwards of 2 hours to kind of get that same feeling. So thank you guys all for being here today and for listening to me. I'm having a lot of fun, and I'm going to start rambling if I keep going because I could definitely tell you some stories, but we don't, need that right now. So my topic that I kind of came up with again was just that drowning in sobriety and, how we can come back from that, because I just feel like we don't talk enough about dying sober in sobriety because we're afraid to speak about it. So I hope you guys can find something from that you'd like to talk about. And if not, it's your meeting. You can do what you want. Thanks, guys.